In the heart of ancient Rome, the Caesar's palace stands magnificent with its grand design. The walls are made of white marble and adorned with golden engravings that reflect sunlight. Inside, massive columns support the ceiling, and mosaic floors depict historical scenes from the life of the Roman Empire. Caesar Marcus sits on his throne, wearing a golden crown and a luxurious red robe. Behind him, his personal guards stand silently, armed with shields and swords. In one of the dark alleys outside the palace, a group of Roman senators secretly gathers. They are plotting to overthrow Caesar Marcus due to his excesses and tyranny. One of them, Lucius, holds a scroll containing the conspiracy plans. The atmosphere is tense, with dim lighting coming from a small torch on the wall. The sound of the guards' footsteps can be heard in the background. In the Senate Hall, where stone seats are arranged in a circular pattern, Lucius stands in the center to reveal his plan. He speaks passionately, explaining how they can eliminate Caesar and restore order to the empire. Members of the Senate exchange glances. Some seem to agree, while others hesitate. In the background, a large statue of the god Jupiter silently watches the scene. A pitch-black night, the sky covered with clouds that block the moonlight. Caesar Marcus sits alone in his room, staring into the mirror as he contemplates his future. He feels something is being plotted against him, but cannot figure out what. His servant knocks on the door to deliver an urgent message. The atmosphere is tense, and shadows move across the walls, as if carrying an ominous sign. The next morning, Caesar is summoned to the Senate. As he enters the hall, he finds all the members standing, their faces filled with anger. Suddenly, Lucius pulls out a dagger and attacks Caesar. Others follow, and the scene turns into chaos. Blood spills onto the stone floor, and Caesar falls to the ground, looking up at the sky. After Caesar's fall, Lucius declares the beginning of a new era for the Roman Empire. A grand celebration is held in the main square, where people gather to listen to his speech. Flags flutter in the air, and music plays in the background. People wave their hands, some crying with joy or sorrow. The sky is clear, and the sun shines brightly above their heads. After Lucius's announcement of a new era, the main square transforms into a grand festival. People wear colorful garments, and musicians play traditional instruments, like the Roman flute and lyre. Traditional folk dances take place, and small stalls sell food and drinks. Children run through the crowds, and vendors call out enthusiastically to attract customers. In the center of the square, a giant statue of the god Mars stands, as if blessing this new day. While everyone celebrates the change, a small group of Caesar Marcus's former soldiers gathers secretly in one of the old temples. They are dissatisfied with Caesar's fall and see Lucius as nothing more than a new tyrant. One of them, Titus, suggests a plan to regain control. The atmosphere inside the temple is dark, lit only by candles, and the ancient statues silently watch over them. Another pitch-black night, but this time in the camp of Caesar Marcus's former soldiers. Tents are scattered everywhere, and fires burn in several spots. Soldiers sit around the fires, eating and preparing their weapons for the upcoming battle. Titus stands before them, delivering an inspiring speech, urging them to restore honor and the empire. The sky is full of stars, and the air is cold and still. The next morning, the battle begins between Lucius's supporters and Caesar Marcus's former followers. The main square turns into a battlefield. Shields clash and swords gleam under the sunlight. Dust fills the air and screams echo everywhere. Titus and Lucius face each other directly in a decisive confrontation. Each holds a sword, and their fight becomes the turning point of the battle. After hours of fierce fighting, Titus succeeds in defeating Lucius and temporarily restoring order to the empire. But the victory is not as joyful as he had hoped. Many soldiers have died, and the square is covered in blood. Titus stands in the middle of the square, looking at the scattered bodies and wondering if this was the right way to restore honor. The sky begins to cloud over, and the first drops of rain fall onto the ground. In the days following the battle, Titus announces his intention to rebuild the empire on the basis of peace and justice. He holds a meeting with the people in the main square, where he delivers a speech calling for unity and reconciliation. A new statue is placed in the square, symbolizing peace and justice. The sun rises again, as if heralding a new beginning. After his inspiring speech, Titus began implementing his plans to rebuild Rome. He ordered the restoration of ancient temples and the rehabilitation of public squares. Workers filled the streets, carrying stones and wood. Women and children also participated, helping to plant public gardens. The atmosphere was full of activity and vitality, and people felt hope for the first time in years. With the dawn of a new era, Titus announced his full support for science and philosophy. He invited scholars and philosophers from across the empire to visit Rome and contribute to building a new intellectual society. Libraries were reopened and schools were built in every neighborhood. One day, Titus visited an ancient library that had been recently restored and listened to a lecture by one of the prominent philosophers. People sat on stone benches, excited to reclaim their cultural heritage. As the traditional Roman holiday season approached, massive celebrations were organized throughout the city. People dressed in colorful garments and participated in processions that passed through the main streets. Statues of ancient gods were adorned with flowers, and musicians played traditional melodies. In the evening, candles were lit everywhere, and fires blazed in public squares for gatherings of dance and song. To confirm his support for farmers and land workers, Titus made a personal visit to the fields outside the city. There, he met with farmers who were working hard to cultivate crops. He spoke with them about their needs and provided them with the necessary support. Children played between rows of crops, and women gathered grain into baskets. The atmosphere was full of simplicity and hard work. While things seemed stable, news arrived of an invasion by barbarian tribes from the north. Soldiers began preparing for a new battle, and weapons were readied in the camps. Titus held an emergency meeting with military leaders to devise a defensive strategy. The atmosphere inside the palace was tense, and everyone realized that this battle could be the most dangerous yet. On the empire's borders, the Roman army faced the barbarian army in a fierce battle. The barbarians wore leather clothing and wielded primitive weapons, but they were strong and numerous. The Roman army relied on organization and military tactics. The battle lasted for hours, and blood flowed on the ground. Titus himself joined the fight, boosting the soldiers' morale. On the empire's borders, the Roman army faced the barbarian army in a fierce battle. The barbarians wore leather clothing and wielded primitive weapons, but they were strong and numerous. The Roman army relied on organization and military tactics. The battle lasted for hours, and blood flowed on the ground. Titus himself joined the fight, boosting the soldiers' morale. After years of rule, Titus decided it was time to hand over power to the next generation. He held a grand celebration in the public square, where he offered his final advice to the people. He said that peace and justice are the only foundations for the empire's survival. He officially announced his retirement and handed over power to his son Octavius, who promised to continue the mission. The sun set, as if bidding farewell to an era and welcoming another. In this way, the story of the fall of the Caesar ends, and a new era begins with Titus, who proved that strength lies not only in swords, but in wisdom and justice.